brand says it sets out to redefine high performance. Our first perspective on what that really means comes in the form of this CUPRA Ateca model, which takes some of the Volkswagen Group's choicest engineering elements and blends them into a rapid, family-friendly package, delivering 300 PS, four-wheel drive, launch control and paddle shift DSG transmission.
And is hard. Ex-Fiat boss Luca De Meo knows that. Back in 2011, he tried to do it with the Abarth nameplate. In 2018, the same man, now working for the Spanish arm of the Volkswagen Group, tried again with a fresh Seat-related mark, CUPRA. In future, this standalone nameplate will have its own unique designs. To begin with, though, it's introduced itself with something more familiar. This car, the CUPRA Ateca. For years, we've been told that Spanish maker Seat is a kind of Iberian Alfa Romeo. In the CUPRA, though, it has an automotive brand with a much more credible claim to that description. You'll probably know the name, but only as a sporty trim designation that goes back to 1996, since when it's been used on a whole string of Ibiza and Leon hot hatches. Now, Seat wants CUPRA to mean more, creating, in its words, a range of unique, sophisticated performance models designed to captivate car enthusiasts. In which case, what kind of start have we got off to here? After all, as you might have already noted, this particular model isn't particularly unique. It's basically a top-end sporting version of Seat's Ateca mid-sized SUV with a different brand badge and something of a premium price. There's plenty of sophisticated performance, though. CUPRA Ateca buyers get four-wheel drive, paddle shift DSG auto transmission, and pretty much the same rip-snorting 2-litre TSI petrol turbo engine that's fitted to a Volkswagen Golf R, here putting out a potent 300 PS. This, of course, is just a starting point. No fewer than 7 CUPRA models will be available through the freshly formed CUPRA dealer network by 2021, including the bespoke design that will effectively replace this car, the CUPRA Formentor. The idea, says the company, is to create cars not founded in nostalgia, but rooted in the present. Presumably, that's meant to be a dig at directly competing brands like Alfa Romeo and Mini, both of which produce products this CUPRA Ateca sets out to directly target, namely quick, charismatic, petrol-powered mid-sized SUVs. Cars that offer a lot of what you get in, say, a Porsche Macan for a great deal less money. That sounds an interesting market niche. Can this car fill it? Well, let's find out. In terms of the engineering behind this car, there's nothing we haven't seen before in a Volkswagen Group model, but the CUPRA engineers credit themselves with bringing all the various ingredients together in a form never previously seen in one of the Wolfsburg conglomerate's SUVs. The elements in question include a 300 PS 2-litre TSI turbo petrol engine borrowed from the Volkswagen Golf R, and much the same other engineering elements you'd also find on that car: a 7-speed DSG paddle shift gearbox, a Haldex 4-wheel drive system, and stiff, strong, modular MQB architecture. Dynamic chassis control, adaptive dampers are also standard fit, and there are 5 driving settings, including a choice of comfort, sport, or Max Attack CUPRA driving modes. This car sits 10mm closer to the road than the ordinary Ateca and uses retuned springs and dampers along with big 19-inch wheels, so the ride quality will inevitably be firmer than that of a standard Ateca model, but of course body control and corner turning will be of a different order too. It's satisfyingly rapid, rests to 62 miles an hour, occupying 5.2 seconds en route to 153 miles an hour flat out, but rather Audi-like in the way that all this speed is delivered with such little drama. Bowl into a corner, judge your entry speed just right, and it just grips and goes, courtesy of the MQB platform's inherent torsional rigidity and the 4-drive system's prodigious traction. Set the car up right and you'll find that body roll is so well controlled that it certainly doesn't feel like you're in any kind of SUV. But it seems like so much engineering effort's gone into achieving this admirable result that a degree of driver involvement has been lost. Essentially, this Ateca does almost everything for you. If your point of comparison in deciding this is a Golf R or some other hot hatch quite like it, then perhaps that's a bit unfair. This CUPRA is carrying around 130 kilos more weight than one of those, has a higher centre of gravity and slightly less power for a start, all of these being compromises that most likely buyers of this car will be happy to make for the extra practicality of the SUV body style. A better benchmark for this Spanish contender lies with the car we'd suggest to be its most direct rival, the 310 PS John Cooper Works version of the Mini Countryman. This is certainly a slightly more engaging thing, but would probably cost significantly more once you'd spec'd it to CUPRA standards. Mini charges extra, for instance, if you want adaptive damping. But this wild Ateca wants to do more than just appeal on the spec sheet, which is why the Spaniards have made sure it has a few charismatic tricks up its sleeve. Select the angriest of its 5 drive profile driving modes, CUPRA, and the quad pipe exhaust pops and pops engagingly as you flick through the steering paddles and enjoy quicker downshifts from the DSG gearbox. At the same time, the steering weight rises while throttle response sharpens. And the ride gets firmer too, because, as mentioned earlier, the driving mode system is also hooked up to a standard dynamic chassis control adaptive damping setup. We're not entirely certain that the DCC settings have been perfectly judged. In comfort, there's a little more body roll than you'd ideally want. That sorts itself out in the profile system's more dynamic sport and CUPRA settings, but the trade-off is that the ride gets a bit fidgety. To be fair, the Spanish engineers have built in quite a lot of configurability here. There's an individual drive profile menu that allows you to choose your own parameters. And you also get 2 further low-speed traction-orientated settings. The snow option might be quite useful on an icy morning, but we can't imagine many CUPRA Ateca owners ever using the off-road option. The combination of this car's 10mm reduction in ride height and its slimline 40 profile tyres together will leave it floundering on anything but the lightest forest track. Which of course matters not one jot with a car like this. Potential buyers are looking for most of what will be delivered by a Porsche Macan in a more accessible yet still sophisticated family-friendly package. The CUPRA model that will eventually replace this one, the classy-looking Formentor, is much better placed to deliver on this demanding brief, but for the time being, this CUPRA Ateca makes a decent fist of it. It's certainly just as quick as a 2-litre Macan, as perhaps you'd expect, given that it uses almost exactly the same 2-litre TSI engine. Here, this unit develops 400 Nm of torque, available very accessibly between 2,000 and 5,200 RPM, and is mated to standard launch control to hurl you away from rest. Plus, as we've been saying, you've got CUPRA's 4-drive technology to help get all that torque to the tarmac. The setup continually analysing road conditions in real time, including the speed of the car, the speed of each wheel, the steering wheel position, your driving style, and the drive mode selected. To control all this, you're going to need a decent set of brakes, and as you'd want, the front and rear discs on this hot performance Ateca variant have been appropriately enlarged to 340 and 310mm respectively. The optional design pack adds 18-inch Brembo brakes with ventilated discs and even stronger stopping performance. These seem to have been developed by enthusiasts at Seat headquarters in Martorell, but we're not sure the steering has been. Yes, it's quick, direct, and if you select the right drive mode, nicely weighted, but it doesn't deliver an awful lot of information to your fingertips. Still, with all that said, we can't help rather liking this Teutonically influenced, Czech-built Iberian confection. In future, the CUPRA nameplate will be attached to better cars than this, but for the present, it's happily served by this Ateca. It's hard to create a visual brand identity when the starting point for the product in question has to be someone else's car. Still, CUPRA design director Alejandro Mesonero Romanos, who styled the Ateca in the first place, has tried hard here, resisting the temptation for over-embellishment and settling on a reasonably subtle styling package offering just enough to set this CUPRA Ateca apart from its humbler Seat-branded showroom stablemates. The front end's inevitably dominated by the new CUPRA logo adorning the honeycombed upper grille. We can't help thinking that it's the kind of image you might find on a Transformers-style video game. Your opinion may differ. These full LED headlights are standard, and the CUPRA script just below the larger, lower honeycombed intake offers a further bit of extra overtaking presence. Plus, there are large corner faux air intake panels and a silvered lower skid plate to emphasise the car's fashionable crossover credentials. In profile, this CUPRA model aims to set itself apart with special black detailing for the wing mirrors, the window frames, the side mouldings and the roof rails. Plus, there are unique 19-inch diamond-cut alloy wheels with black brake calipers. If you go for the optional design pack, these rims come with an exclusive copper-coloured finish and bigger 18-inch Brembo brakes. It helps that all this tinsel has been applied to a sportier, more dynamic shape than most of the rather pretentious-looking models in this segment usually provide. The precise crease lines are significant in this regard, so is this neat kink in the rear edge of the rear window. And the door mirrors sit on the door shoulders, a design detail that's usually only found on sports cars. And at the rear, well, you'll know you've been overtaken by something a bit different. 4 potent tailpipes are embedded into a dynamic lower diffuser, which sits below a bespoke bumper. Otherwise, it's just as you'd find on any better specified Ateca, with jewel-like LED tail lamps and a subtle roof spoiler featuring high-level brake illumination that runs across the upper section of the raked rear screen. As for the stuff you can't see, well, like all Atecas, this one sits on the same MQB platform used across vast swathes of the Volkswagen Group empire for cars of this size. And, despite its supposed Spanishness, this CUPRA, like other Atecas, rolls down the production lines of Skoda's Kvězny plant in the Czech Republic. Time to take a seat inside. Has the CUPRA brand more overtly differentiated this model's interior? Not really, though that's not to say that efforts haven't been made to imbue more of a premium feel. Key enhancements include these Alcantara-trimmed black sports seats, which can be replaced with race-style bucket seats at extra cost. Plus, you get orange-stitched leather for the steering wheel and gear shifter, illuminated door sill scuff plates and alloy pedals. Go for the optional design pack, and this silver framing around the centre console and the air vents will instead be finished in gloss black. Perhaps most significant, though, is the instrument cluster you view through this 3-spoke CUPRA-branded wheel, Seat's so-called digital cockpit screen, which replaces the usual dials and gauges. It's based on Audi's virtual cockpit screen technology and offers lots of configurable options, starting with the choices offered by this steering wheel view button. This allows you 4 layouts, twin virtual dials with a central information section, the option to have that central information full screen with or without flanking vertical rev counter and speedo readouts, and a single centre dial for when you're focused and really pushing on. If that happens to be on a circuit, then you'll have the chance to use the integrated lap timer function. This 8-inch nav system plus centre dash screen can give you further options to change the layout of the digital cockpit screen with an instrument cluster menu that enables you to tailor the information you want to see in the centre of the virtual dials and in the centre of the display. Otherwise, though, this monitor concentrates on the usual infotainment elements, incorporating all the usual informational, navigational, telephone and entertainment functions with assured cleverness. Plus, thanks to full link connectivity, you can connect in your smartphone via the Apple CarPlay or Android Auto systems. Plus, there's voice control and a proximity sensor that detects when your hand is close to the screen surface. Text, Twitter and Facebook messages can be read out to you as you drive, and the software will let you dictate a reply if you really are desperate to comment on a post. Plus, you can set up your own screen gestures to shortcut your most popular commands. The monitor's also the display point for the top view camera system that uses 4 cameras that combine to give a bird's eye 360-degree view of the vehicle's position. Ergonomically, there's little to fault here. Thanks to the SUV body style, you get a slightly higher seating position than you would in a comparably priced hot hatch, with consequently better all-round visibility that's further aided by these slim A-pillars. The front end is reasonably easy to judge thanks to the ridges on the bonnet, and it's straightforward to get comfortable courtesy of the wide range of adjustment available for both the supportive seat and the grippy leather-stitched steering wheel. There's plenty of cabin practicality too. You'll most commonly be stowing your phone in this storage tray just ahead of the gear lever and just below the 12-volt USB and aux-in connectivity points. Talking of storage, well, there's a reasonable amount, including this overhead sunglasses compartment and a lidded cubby between the front seats with a cup holder moulding positioned just in front of it for a small and a large bottle. This is in addition to a glove box whose size is slightly compromised by media equipment, a ticket clip on the driver's sun visor and door bins that are rather narrow but reasonably deep. Build quality seems decent and hard, scratchy plastics seem, for the most part, to have been relegated to areas you rarely touch. Time to take a seat in the rear. Now, the rear doors are a good size and open wide enough to make access easy. Plus, as with all SUVs of this kind, a higher roofline than you'd get on a comparably priced Focus or Leon-sized hatch mean that it's easier to reach in and strap kids into their child seats. Once inside, you'll find that actually there isn't really any more space than you'd get in the kind of potent hot hatch you could have bought for the same money. But the high roofline certainly makes it feel more spacious, and the way it's all been packaged gives the impression that you could take 3 adults here if need be. That's certainly possible in this Ateca, but you'd still have to be on pretty familiar terms with your fellow passengers, and for the centre occupant, there's the inconvenience of this rather high central transmission tunnel. If there are only 2 of you, you'll get to use this fold-down centre armrest, which incorporates a couple of built-in cup holders. Signs of CUPRA embellishment are relatively few back here. Orange stitching on the Alcantara seats, more Alcantara on the door cards, and orange stitched floor mats, and that's about it. As for storage, well, there are seat back pockets and decently sized door bins, and we like this little compartment above the transmission tunnel, the top of which incorporates twin USBs and a neat little net for your phone. And let's finish with a look at boot space. Now here we've got the optional powered tailgate, which comes with the comfort and sound pack, and once it raises, a decently sized cargo area is revealed with a reasonably low loading lip. Now, because this is a 4-wheel drive Ateca, you can't have the 510-litre capacity you'd get on front-driven Seat versions of this car. But the 485-litre capacity you do get should be sufficient for most family users. It's certainly a lot more than you'd get in a typical hot hatch. 7 carry-on suitcases will fit. Unfortunately, again, because of the bulky packaging of that 4-wheel drive system, you can't have the adjustable height boot floor that's fitted to an ordinary front-driven Ateca. There are lower corner compartments to the left and right and a couple of bag hooks, but there's no 12-volt port, and the usual tie-down points are challenging to access. There's an underfloor compartment where the optional space-saver spare wheel sits, with a small amount of stowage space to the left of it. Should you need room for longer items, a ski hatch is provided, making up for the fact that the rear bench doesn't have a 40-20-40 split. Flattening the 60-40 split backrest is easy thanks to these cargo sidewall mounted catches. And once everything's retracted, 1,579 litres of total capacity is revealed. There's no shortage of ambition here, at least in terms of pricing anyway. This CUPRA Ateca is priced from around £36,000 in its standard form, and you can spend a lot more than that if you want. From that starting point, you've three further choices. You can pay £1,930 to get the comfort and sound pack we've got here, or find £3,345 to get the aesthetically orientated design pack. Or, if you're really determined to spend over £40,000 and give the Inland Revenue its showroom tax, you can find a cool £5,275 over the cost of the base version, get both packs fitted together and sign a cheque for well over £41,000, which would be an interesting decision, given that much of what's on offer here could also be delivered by a pretty dynamic-looking Seat Ateca FR Sport 2-litre TSI model that uses much of the same engineering and costs around £8,500 less. The CUPRA marketeers would argue that to be a very different product, offering 110 PS less beneath the bonnet. But the fact remains that the FR Sport trimmed version of this Ateca doesn't look too much different from this more aspirational model and sells from much the same showroom. The CUPRA brand doesn't have standalone dealerships. In fact, it doesn't have many dealerships at all. Just 25 Seat franchises having been chosen to represent the marque across the UK. So it'll probably make quite a difference whether you happen to live somewhere in the vicinity of one. The CUPRA people tell us that there's nothing quite like what's on offer here. We're not quite so sure. It's true that the ordinary Seat Ateca lineup doesn't have any variant approaching this car's 300 PS output, but we'd argue that pretty much everything you get here is also delivered by a Seat Leon ST CUPRA 300 Estate, which is even more practical than this SUV and duplicates this car's mechanical recipe almost exactly, while costing nearly £3,000 less. There's direct competition from other would-be premium brands too. Obviously, for the kind of money being asked here, you could choose from a very appealing selection of super hatches, but if we assume that what you really want is what's on offer here, a very fast, well-equipped and fairly compact mid-sized SUV, then Mini provides it almost exactly in the form of their John Cooper Works Countryman model. That car, like this one, has around 300 PS, a racy look, and paddle shift auto transmission. But significantly, it forces you to pay extra for the adaptive damping system you'll want in a car of this kind. If you're prepared to compromise a little on power in return for a bit of extra cabin space, another alternative might be found in the shape of Alfa Romeo's Stelvio SUV, which in 2-litre turbo petrol 200 horsepower super all-wheel drive form costs around £38,000. Beyond that, there are, of course, plenty of sportily trimmed, volume-branded mid-sized SUVs we could mention, none of which are aspirational or fast enough. And plenty of premium-branded mid-sized SUVs too, none of which would be anywhere near affordable enough to a CUPRA Ateca buyer if specified with four-wheel drive and a similarly performing engine. Ultimately, what's being promised here is a lot of what you get in stylised, premium sporting mid-sized SUVs like Porsche's Macan, BMW's X4 or the Mercedes GLC Coupe, but for significantly less money. If you buy into that and find your interest in this Spanish contender growing, then you're going to need to know just how generous the CUPRA brand has been when it comes to the standard spec. So let's take a look at that now. Even in standard form, the CUPRA Ateca sets itself apart aesthetically with a bespoke honeycombed front grille, glossy black detailing, special side mouldings, unique bumpers and 19-inch diamond-cut alloy wheels with black brake calipers, plus 4 tailpipes sit potently within the bespoke rear diffuser. Full LED headlights, roof rails, a rear spoiler, dark tinted rear windows, lowered CUPRA sports suspension and metallic paint in a choice of 6 colours also come included. Plus, you get power folding mirrors, CUPRA welcome puddle lights, auto headlamps and wipers, keyless entry and a park assist system with all-round sensors to steer you into spaces. Inside, the cabin's distinguished by Alcantara-trimmed black sports seats, orange-stitched leather for the steering wheel and gear shifter, illuminated door-sill scuff plates, alloy pedals, and a highly configurable digital cockpit instrument display screen, replacing the usual gauges. Plus, there's the kind of luxury spec you'd have a right to expect at this car's aspirational price point. So, tick off dual-zone climate control, a rear-view camera, a 360-degree top-view camera, an auto-dimming rear-view mirror, a wireless phone charger and cruise control. Plus, there's a CUPRA drive profile driving mode system with a wide range of settings that alter not only the feel of the progressive steering and gear shifts from the 7-speed DSG Sports Auto transmission, but suspension feel thanks to the inclusion of standard DCC or dynamic chassis control. Infotainment's primarily taken care of by an 8-inch Nav System Plus centre dash screen, which includes 3D sat-nav mapping, a DAB tuner, Bluetooth connectivity, traffic updates, media features and the brand's full-link smartphone integration set up for Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And of course, there's a whole package of camera-driven safety kit. We'll get to that in a moment. After we've briefed you on options, you can order a Space Saver spare wheel separately, and we'd want the special CUPRA front bucket seats, though they command a cool £1,600 price premium. Another £1,000 would get you a large panoramic glass roof, which comes with a multicolour interior ambient lighting pack. And you can also specify pre-installation for a tow bar. It's more likely, though, that CUPRA Ateca customers are going to be looking at those extra cost option packs we mentioned at the beginning, which can be ordered separately or together at a £1,100 combined saving. If you're simply interested in aesthetics, your dealer will point you to Design Spec, which gives you a black interior styling pack and an exclusive copper-coloured finish for the 19-inch wheel rims, which come complete with bigger 18-inch Brembo brakes. Here, though, we've got the Comfort and Sound pack, which gives you a powered tailgate, the higher-grade Beats audio system, heated front seats, a Space Saver spare wheel, and traffic sign recognition, which pictures speed signs you pass, displaying them on the dash. That brings us neatly onto this car's broader safety spec. Now, to be frank, given the fee required for the standard model, we're surprised that it's necessary to pay extra for traffic sign recognition, but all models do get plenty of other camera features in a tally headlined by the brand's Front Assist autonomous braking package. This incorporates a city emergency braking and pedestrian protection setup that works at low urban speeds of up to 37 miles an hour and scans the road ahead for static things or pedestrians who might be likely to step out in front of you. If a hazard is detected, you'll be warned. If you don't respond or aren't able to, the brakes will automatically be applied to decrease the severity of any resulting accident. The front assist part of the package works at higher speeds and constantly measures the distance between you and the vehicle in front, warning you and, if necessary, applying the brakes if you get too close. Also standard is what the CUPRA brand calls its Advanced Driving Safety Pack. This includes 4 elements: high beam assist, which dips your headlights for you at night; lane assist, which warns you if you drift out of lane on the highway and can gently apply steering lock to ease you back to where you ought to be; blind spot detection, which stops you from dangerously pulling out to overtake in front of another vehicle; and rear cross traffic alert, which alerts you to incoming traffic when you're reversing out of a space. Also standard on every CUPRA Ateca is a tiredness recognition system that monitors steering inputs to assess if the person driving is becoming drowsy. If this is the case, it gives audible and visible warnings to pull over and have a break. Plus, of course, there are all the usual passive safety features you'd expect, including twin front, side and curtain airbags, as well as one for the driver's knees. You also get anti-whiplash headrests, ISOFIX seat mounts in the rear, ABS brakes and ESC, or electronic stability control. There's also an XDS differential lock system to prevent the wheels from spinning on loose terrain, tyre pressure monitoring and hill hold control that stops the car from rolling backwards when pulling away on an incline. Thanks to all of this, the Ateca scored a full 5-star result in the now much tougher Euro NCAP safety tests. Looking at the individual elements of this, for adult passengers, the car achieved a 93% score, and for child occupants, it got an 84% reading. For pedestrians, the score fell to 71%, as it usually does on crossovers, thanks to their boxier shape. What CUPRA has surprisingly chosen not to include, even as an option, is any kind of autonomous driving capability, which is surprising because SEAT does offer a traffic jam assist feature on the ordinary Ateca that fits that remit. This will basically drive the car for you at low speeds, keeping you in the centre of your lane while braking, steering and speeding up or down as necessary. But perhaps it doesn't fit with the CUPRA hard driving vibe. Shoehorn a shopping rocket engine into your compact family SUV and you don't expect exemplary running cost returns, but you can't afford for the figures to blow the family budget either. So what are we served up here? CUPRA quotes up to 34 mpg on the WLTP combined cycle and 168 grams per kilometre of NEDC rated CO2, which doesn't seem too bad for a 153 mile an hour family crossover capable of launching itself to 62 miles an hour in just 5.3 seconds. To give you some segment perspective, this car's closest rival, a Mini Countryman John Cooper Works, manages up to 40.9 mpg and up to 156 grams per kilometre, which probably isn't enough of an advantage to make a difference if you've your heart set on this CUPRA. As you'd expect, this car's engineering incorporates all the usual efficiency tools at the disposal of modern automakers. Things like brake energy regeneration and a start-stop system that cuts the engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. As a driver, though, you're slightly limited in what you can do to improve this model's running cost showing because the brand doesn't offer the useful eco setting on the drive profile driving mode system that you get with lesser Atecas. You do, though, get an Eco Trainer system included as part of the Nav System Plus Centre Dash infotainment screen package. Here, your driving is rated for things like braking, throttle use and anticipation, and points awarded. It's a bit like being back at school, isn't it? The results of your efforts then visualised on a graphical Eco Points overview screen. There's also a graphical fuel consumption screen showing the success or otherwise of your recent efforts towards frugality. And you can also ask the Eco Trainer for efficiency tips, though personally we wouldn't, because most of them are, to be frank, rather obvious. Things like smooth journeys means efficient consumption and anticipate gear changes to consume less. Likely CUPRA owners will of course be concerned about more than just fuel economy and taxation-orientated CO2 returns. They're going to want to keep their maintenance costs down, for example, so they'll be pleased to hear that the first 3 manufacturer-scheduled services are included as part of a CUPRA Care package, which is built into the car's asking price and offers 3 years of roadside assistance, along with the inclusive replacement of brake pads and wiper blades. Servicing intervals, by the way, are every 18,641 miles, which sounds very precise, or every 2 years. As with SEAT models, you get a 3-year, 60,000 mile warranty with no mileage limit in the first 2 years. Residual values are somewhat uncertain, as will be the case for any new model from a freshly formed brand, but it's encouraging that standard SEAT Ateca models perform pretty well in this regard. That's 168 grams per kilometre CO2 translates into a benefit-in-kind taxation rate of 34%, and a first-year vehicle excise duty rate of £515, with £140 to pay annually from the second to the fifth year of ownership. If, though, you add both the comfort and sound and the design packs to your CUPRA Ateca, so pushing the list price over the £40,000 mark, your second-year road tax will be rated at £450, meaning that over the course of 5 years, your VED payment total will rise by a significant £1,550. Insurance is Group 33E. In theory, the CUPRA Ateca makes sense. Combine the engine, gearbox and drivetrain of an acclaimed hot hatchback, in this case the Volkswagen Golf R, with the trendy, timely and practical body style of a compact mid-sized SUV. In practice, though, you wonder whether all of this has been put together in a special enough way to justify the premium prices being asked here. Ultimately, it's difficult to believe that this car would have been much different if it had been merely a tinselled-up Ateca rather than trying to be a distinct model in its own right. Or to put it another way, if it had been a Seat Ateca CUPRA rather than a CUPRA Ateca. And that's just the problem. The brand is trying to be distinctive, but the product, though very likeable, just isn't. In future, though, CUPRA designs certainly will be. The company's Formentor model is evidence of that. That car is the model which will take this fledgling marque properly into the aspirational hinterland that lies between the volume and premium brands, and make it a very credible competitor to the manufacturers that currently populate this territory, nameplates like Alfa Romeo, Honda, DS and Mini. But that's in the future. For the present, the CUPRA story had to begin somewhere, and this very saleable package is a reasonable place to start. It's based on the best handling volume brand mid-sized SUV you can buy, uses the engine from arguably the best mid-sized hot hatch you can buy, and offers all the equipment features you'd have to do without if you spent the same money on a more feebly performing crossover of the same size from a premium brand. True, this model's life cycle will probably be quite short, but with the right kind of deal behind it, you could imagine the right kind of buyer really feeling quite pleased with one of these. After all, it's fast, it's practical, interesting to look at, and for the time being anyway, you might even think it to be a touch exotic. Whether you actually get what's been promised here, essentially a Porsche Macan, a BMW X4 or a Mercedes GLC Coupe distilled down into something more affordable, is a judgment you might actually rather enjoy making. We're not quite convinced, but we have seen enough to feel hopeful about the CUPRA brand's future. Can there really be Latin spirit in every one? If the marque could deliver that, there's a place for it in the market.